Natasha's hands trembled as she gripped her car keys, standing frozen in the doorway of what she thought was her home. The words Eric had just spoken kept replaying in her mind, each repetition like another slap across her face, but it was the smile that made her stomach turn. Not a nervous smile, not an apologetic smile, but a satisfied smile, like a man who'd just won a game she hadn't known they were playing. "You're not my wife, Natasha," he'd said, those 5 words destroying everything she thought she knew. "You never were." She had come home early, had been so excited. Their 5th anniversary was tomorrow, and she'd cut her business trip short, imagining his surprise. Maybe they'd go to that Italian restaurant he liked. Maybe they'd finally have the conversation about starting a family that she'd been wanting to have. Instead, she'd walked into their home office and found him sitting at the desk with papers spread everywhere, and when he looked up, that smile had already been on his face, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "What are you talking about?" The words had barely made it out of her throat. Eric had leaned back in the leather chair, her father's anniversary gift to them, and gestured at the papers. "I never filed our marriage certificate. 5 years ago, after that beautiful wedding your family paid for, I just never turned in the paperwork. You're not legally my wife. You never have been." The room had started spinning then. Natasha had reached for the door frame to steady herself, her designer luggage dropping to the floor with a thud that seemed to come from very far away. "That's not possible," she'd whispered. "We signed papers. We have a marriage license on the wall. We filed taxes together." "That license on the wall?" Eric had laughed, actually laughed. "I made it at a print shop. Cost me $40. And those taxes? I've been filing as married, sure, but to Candace. You remember Candace, don't you? My business associate." Natasha had remembered Candace. Tall, always professional, cool handshakes and business lunches. The woman who'd been at their house 100 times, who'd sat at their dinner table, who Natasha had actually liked because she seemed smart and driven. "Candace and I have been married for 7 years, Eric had continued, and the satisfaction in his voice was like poison. "We met in college. We got married right after graduation. Then we made a plan. See, I needed what you had. Money, connections, your family's reputation in business. Your cousin runs one of the biggest investment firms in the state, your uncle sits on half the boards in this city, and you had your own consulting business and a trust fund. We needed all of that. So you what?" Natasha had asked, her voice breaking. "You pretended to fall in love with me? For 5 years. It wasn't that hard," Eric had said, and the cruelty in his voice was casual, like he was discussing the weather. "You were so eager to believe someone loved you, so desperate to build a life. You made it easy. And it worked perfectly. Your family welcomed me in, your cousin helped me make connections, you signed off on business deals, put your name on properties, helped me secure loans. Everything we needed, you gave us." The word "us" had been the knife that twisted. "You and Candace," Natasha had said slowly. This whole time, Eric had confirmed. "She's been patient, my wife. Living in that apartment across town, raising our son while I played house with you. But we have what we need now. The business is established, the properties are secured, the investments are paying off. We don't need you anymore." A son. They had a son. While Natasha had been talking about maybe trying for a baby, Eric had a 4-year-old child with another woman. "You need to leave," Eric had said then, standing up, and the smile had finally dropped from his face, replaced by cold dismissal. "This is my house. These are my things. You can take your clothes, your personal items, whatever. But everything else stays here. The cars, the furniture, the art on the walls, it's all mine. The house is in my name," Natasha had said, the words coming automatically even though her mind was still reeling. "I signed the mortgage papers. And I've been paying that mortgage," Eric had shot back. "You'll find that's my name on the bank accounts, my name on the business registrations. Sure, you signed some papers, but you don't have anything, Natasha. You were just a useful tool, and now you're not useful anymore." She had stared at him, this man she'd shared a bed with for 5 years, this man she'd cooked breakfast for and planned vacations with and comforted through his father's funeral. This stranger wearing her husband's face. "Get out," Eric had said, "or I'll call the police and tell them you're trespassing." And Natasha had left, somehow making her legs work, somehow getting to her car, somehow driving away from the house while her entire world collapsed around her. She'd driven without seeing, operated on autopilot, and found herself in the parking lot of a hotel downtown, the nicest one she could think of, though she couldn't remember deciding to come here. Now she sat in the car watching people walk in and out of the hotel lobby, normal people having normal days while her life was ending. 5 years. 5 years of loving someone who didn't exist. 5 years of building what she thought was a marriage, a partnership, a future. 5 years of being used. She thought about the business deals she'd helped him make, introducing him to her cousin Monica, who ran the family's investment firm. She thought about the property purchases, how excited she'd been to build their real estate portfolio. She thought about the dinner parties where she'd smiled and played the perfect wife while Candace had sat at their table, probably laughing inside. Her phone buzzed. A text from Eric: "Don't make this difficult. Accept reality and move on." Natasha looked at the message for a long moment, then slowly got out of the car. She walked into the hotel lobby, booked a suite without even asking the price, and rode the elevator up to the 15th floor. The room was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a king bed with crisp white linens, a marble bathroom bigger than some apartments. She sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere in her chest, grief for a marriage that never existed, for a husband who was never hers, for 5 years of her life that had been built on lies. But underneath the grief, underneath the shock and the betrayal and the pain, something else was beginning to stir. Something cold and sharp and clear. Eric had smiled at her like he'd won, like she was defeated, like she was nothing. He was wrong. Natasha wiped her face and opened her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Jerome Washington, her friend from law school who'd gone on to become one of the best lawyers in the city. She'd been at his wedding, had met his kids. He was someone she could trust. She pressed call. "Natasha." Jerome answered on the second ring. "Hey, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. How's the business trip?" "I need a lawyer," Natasha said, her voice steadier than she felt. "And I need one tonight. Can you come to the Meridian Hotel? Room 1523. There was a pause, then Jerome's voice shifted. "All business." "What happened?" "Everything," Natasha said. "Everything happened. Can you come?" "I'm on my way," Jerome said. "Don't talk to anyone until I get there. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, don't make any promises. Just wait for me." "Okay," Natasha whispered. She ended the call and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, Eric was probably celebrating with Candace, thinking he'd gotten away with it, thinking he'd used her and discarded her and there was nothing she could do about it. He had smiled at her like he'd won. But the game wasn't over yet. Jerome arrived 40 minutes later, carrying his leather briefcase and wearing the concerned expression of someone who'd prepared himself for bad news. Natasha let him in and watched him take in her appearance. Still in her business suit from the trip, makeup smeared from crying, hair disheveled from running her hands through it repeatedly. "Tell me everything," Jerome said, settling into one of the suite's armchairs. He pulled out a legal pad and pen, his movements calm and professional. "Start from the beginning." Natasha told him, the words coming easier now that she'd said them out loud once. She explained about coming home early, about Eric's revelation, about the fake marriage license and the real wife and the child she'd never known existed. Jerome's expression darkened as she spoke, his pen moving rapidly across the legal pad. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's fraud," he finally said. "Multiple counts. Identity theft, forgery, probably theft by deception. This isn't just a civil matter, Natasha. This is criminal." "He said everything is in his name," Natasha said, her voice small. "He said I don't have anything." "Let's find out what you actually have," Jerome said, opening his briefcase and pulling out a laptop. "I'm going to need you to think carefully. What documents have you signed over the last 5 years? What accounts did you have access to? What properties did you think you owned?" They worked through the night, Natasha calling up memories while Jerome took notes and made searches on his computer. The house on Maple Street, the one she'd thought was their family home. The investment property downtown. The vacation condo in Florida. The business accounts. The credit cards. The loans. "Wait," Jerome said suddenly, his fingers freezing on the keyboard. "You signed the mortgage papers for the house?" "Yes," Natasha confirmed. "Eric said it made sense for my name to be on it because of my credit score. And this investment property, the commercial building downtown. You signed those papers too?" "Yes, but Eric said it was just a formality, that we were buying it together." Jerome's expression shifted, something like satisfaction crossing his face. "Natasha, I need you to log into your email. All of your email accounts, personal and business. We need to pull every document you've ever signed, every contract, every agreement." They worked until 3 in the morning, downloading files, saving documents, creating a digital paper trail. As the evidence accumulated, Jerome started laughing, quiet at first, then louder. "What?" Natasha asked, exhausted and confused. What's funny about this? He's an idiot, Jerome said, shaking his head. Eric is an idiot. He was so focused on using your name and your reputation that he put everything in your name legally. Look at this. He turned his laptop toward her, showing a property deed. This house, the one he told you to leave? Your name is on the deed. Just your name. You own it. Natasha leaned forward, reading the document carefully. There it was, Natasha Williams, sole owner. But he said. He lied, Jerome interrupted. Or he didn't understand what he was signing. But legally that house is yours. And look at this. He pulled up another document. This investment property downtown? Yours. This one? Yours. Do you know what I think happened? I think Eric needed your signature and your good credit to secure these properties, but banks don't care about fake husbands. They care about who's on the paperwork. And on the paperwork, it's you. Natasha felt something shift in her chest, the weight of defeat beginning to lift. How many properties? So far? 4. But we're not done yet. Jerome kept typing, kept searching. Oh, this is beautiful. Look at this. He showed her a business registration document. The consulting firm that Eric had been running for the past 3 years, the one that had grown so quickly, the one that had made so much money? It was registered to Natasha Williams. I don't understand, Natasha said. Why would he do that? Because he needed your business reputation, Jerome explained. You were already established as a consultant before you met him. You had clients, you had credentials, you had licenses. He couldn't just start a firm out of nowhere. So he used your name, your registrations, your business licenses. But that means legally you own the company. They kept digging, kept searching. By the time the sun started rising over the city, painting the hotel room in shades of pink and gold, they had a complete picture. Natasha owned the house. She owned 4 investment properties. She owned the consulting business. Her name was on bank accounts that held over $2 million. Her signature was on contracts with major clients, contracts that specified Natasha Williams as the service provider. He used me, Natasha said slowly, but he gave me everything. Not on purpose, Jerome said. But yes, Eric was so confident, so certain he was smarter than you, that he didn't bother to check what he was actually doing. He needed your name, your credit, your reputation. So he put you on everything. And now everything is yours. What about Candace? Natasha asked. What about their marriage? Jerome pulled up another search. Eric filed taxes as married to Candace. That's going to be a problem for him because he's been claiming married filing jointly for someone who wasn't living in the marital home. But more importantly, if Candace knew about you, if she was part of this plan, she's guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud. We can go after both of them. Natasha stood up and walked to the window, watching the city wake up. People were starting their days, heading to coffee shops and offices, living their normal lives. Her life would never be normal again, but maybe that was okay. Maybe normal was overrated. I want to destroy them, she said quietly. Is that wrong? It's human, Jerome said. And legally we can make their lives very difficult. But Natasha, I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we really go after them, it's going to be hard. It's going to be public. Your story is going to come out. People are going to know what happened to you. Good, Natasha said, turning to face him. Let them know. Let everyone know what Eric and Candace did. I'm not ashamed. I didn't do anything wrong. They did. Jerome smiled, and it was a fierce smile, the smile of a lawyer who'd just been given permission to do what he did best. Then let's begin. First thing tomorrow, we file for full legal control of all properties and businesses in your name. We freeze all accounts. We serve Eric and Candace with notice that they're under investigation for fraud. And then we let the dominoes fall. Tomorrow? Natasha asked. Tomorrow is Sunday, Jerome corrected. So Monday. But tomorrow I want you to do something for me. I want you to call your family. Call your cousin Monica, call your parents, call everyone who loves you. Tell them what happened. You're going to need their support for what comes next. Natasha nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Thank you, Jerome. I don't know what I would have done. You would have figured it out, Jerome interrupted gently. You're stronger than you think, Natasha. Eric made the mistake of underestimating you. A lot of people are about to make that same mistake. Let them. It'll make what comes next so much sweeter. After Jerome left, Natasha ordered room service, took a long shower, and finally fell into bed as the city fully woke up around her. She slept deeply, dreamlessly, and when she woke up in the afternoon she felt different. Clear. Stronger. She picked up her phone and called her cousin Monica. Natasha. Monica answered warmly. How was your trip? Wait, aren't you supposed to be in Seattle until Tuesday? I need to tell you something, Natasha said. And you're not going to believe it. She told the story again, and this time it was easier. This time, underneath the pain and betrayal, there was something else. There was anger, yes, but also determination. Purpose. I'm going to kill him, Monica said when Natasha finished. I'm actually going to kill him. That piece of... Don't, Natasha interrupted. We're going to do this legally. Jerome is handling it. But Monica, I need you to do something for me. Anything, Monica said immediately. I need you to pull every business deal Eric made using my name. Every connection he made through me, through the family. I need to know exactly how much damage he did, how many people he used. Consider it done, Monica said. I'm calling our legal team right now. Natasha, listen to me. You're not alone in this. Our family stands behind you. Always. After she hung up with Monica, Natasha called her parents. That conversation was harder, having to explain to her mother and father that their son-in-law was a fraud, that the marriage they'd celebrated had never been real. But they rallied around her just like Monica had, offering love and support and quiet fury at what Eric had done. By the time Sunday evening arrived, Natasha had spoken to a dozen family members, all of whom promised support, offered resources, and expressed their determination to make sure Eric paid for what he'd done. She'd also ordered every document she could think of, pulled every email, saved every text message. The evidence was overwhelming. Eric had used her systematically, carefully, deliberately. But in doing so, he'd handed her the keys to everything he'd thought he was building. Monday morning, Jerome filed the paperwork. And by Monday afternoon, Eric's world started to fall apart. The first call came at 2:15 Monday afternoon. Natasha was in the hotel suite, reviewing documents with Jerome and a paralegal he'd brought with him, when her phone rang. A known number. Don't answer it, Jerome advised, but Natasha was already reaching for the phone. Hello? What the hell did you do? Eric's voice came through the line, no longer smooth and confident, now sharp with panic. What did you do, Natasha? I asserted my legal rights, Natasha said calmly, meeting Jerome's eyes. He nodded approvingly. You froze the accounts. You locked me out of everything. You can't do this. Actually, I can. The accounts are in my name. The properties are in my name. The business is registered to me. I'm simply taking control of what's legally mine. That's my money. Eric shouted. I earned that money. Using my name, my licenses, my business connections, Natasha said. And now I'm taking it back. Oh, and Eric, you should probably contact a lawyer. A criminal lawyer. Jerome is filing fraud charges tomorrow. She ended the call and found that her hands were steady. The fear and shock from Friday night had transformed into something else entirely. Clarity. Purpose. That was good, Jerome said. Did you notice you recorded that call? Natasha looked down at her phone, where the recording app was still running. I did. Smart. Keep doing that. Record every interaction with him and Candace from now on. Over the next few hours, they continued to piece together the full scope of Eric's deception. The picture that emerged was damning. For 5 years, Eric had been systematically using Natasha's name, credentials, and family connections to build what he thought was his empire. But at every turn he'd needed her signature, her business license, her reputation. And because he'd needed those things, he'd put her name on everything. Monica arrived at 6 with a stack of files and a grim expression. You need to see this, she said, spreading documents across the hotel room's desk. I pulled every business deal Eric made through family connections. It's worse than we thought. The files showed a clear pattern. Eric had approached Monica's investment firm claiming he needed capital to expand their consulting business. Monica, trusting her cousin's husband, had arranged meetings with high-net-worth clients. Eric had pitched the consulting firm's services, secured contracts, and taken large deposits. But here's the thing, Monica said, pointing to a contract. Every single contract specifies Natasha Williams as the primary consultant. Every deposit was made to accounts in her name. Every service agreement lists her credentials, her licenses, her experience. Why would he do that? Natasha asked. Because the clients were investing in you, Monica explained. Your reputation, your track record. Eric couldn't sell himself because he didn't have any legitimate business experience. He was a community college dropout who'd bounced between sales jobs. But you? You had an MBA from Northwestern, 5 years of successful consulting work, glowing recommendations from previous clients. You were the product he was selling. Jerome leaned forward, reading the contracts carefully. This is fraud. Clear, prosecutable fraud. He misrepresented these business relationships. He took money under false pretenses. And if any of these clients didn't receive the services they paid for. Most of them didn't, Monica interrupted. I've been making calls all day. At least 8 major clients paid significant deposits for consulting services that were never delivered. Eric kept pushing back timelines, making excuses, promising results that never came. The clients were getting frustrated, but they didn't want to embarrass the family by pushing too hard. How much money are we talking about? Natasha asked. Monica and Jerome exchanged glances. Including deposits, monthly retainers, and project fees? About $700,000. Natasha felt her breath catch. He stole $700,000 using my name? And that's just through our firm, Monica said. There are probably more victims we haven't found yet. They kept working, kept digging. The paralegal discovered that Eric had also forged Natasha's signature on personal loan guarantees, making her responsible for debts she'd never agreed to. The total exposure was over $300,000. But here's the good news, Jerome said, spreading out a different set of documents. Because Eric put everything in your name, you have legal standing to fix this. You can return the money to the defrauded clients, honor the contracts, provide the services they paid for. You can make this right. With what money? Natasha asked. If he spent everything. The properties, Monica interrupted. The house is worth at least $800,000. The investment properties are worth another $2 million combined. You have assets, Natasha. Real assets. Eric thought he was building his empire, but he was actually building yours. That night, alone in the hotel room after everyone left, Natasha made a list. On one side, she wrote everything Eric had taken from her. 5 years of her life, her trust, her sense of reality, her confidence. On the other side, she wrote what she was taking back. 4 properties worth nearly $3 million, a business with established clients, accounts with $2 million in liquid assets, and something more valuable than any of it, the truth. She thought about Eric's smile when he'd revealed that she wasn't his wife. He'd been so confident, so certain he'd won. But he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd underestimated her. He'd thought she would fall apart, that she would accept his version of reality and slink away quietly. He didn't know her at all. Tuesday morning, Jerome met her at a different office, a corporate law firm where her family's legal team was assembled. 10 people in total, all working on different aspects of the case. There were criminal lawyers, civil attorneys, tax specialists, and private investigators. "We found more," one of the investigators said, a woman named Patricia who'd been working through the night. "Eric and Candace have been running this con for longer than you think. Before he targeted you, there were at least 2 other women." Natasha's stomach turned. "Other women?" Patricia nodded, pulling up files on her laptop. Similar pattern. He'd meet successful women with money or connections, romance them quickly, move in together, start accessing their resources. Then when he got what he needed, he'd break up and move on. The relationships were shorter with them, only about 6 months each because they caught on faster. You were his longest mark because you had the most to offer. Did they report him? Jerome asked. One did, but she didn't have enough evidence. He'd been more careful back then, hadn't overreached as much. The other woman just wanted to forget it happened. I want to talk to them, Natasha said suddenly. Both of them. Can you arrange that? Patricia looked at Jerome, who considered for a moment, then nodded. I think that's a good idea. They might have information that helps the case. And they deserve to know they're not alone. By Wednesday, Natasha had spoken to both women. Their stories were heartbreaking and familiar. The whirlwind romance, the future planning, the gradual financial entanglement, the sudden discard. Both women had blamed themselves, thinking they'd been too trusting, too naive. You weren't naive, Natasha told the second woman, Felicia, during their phone call. You were targeted by someone who makes a living manipulating people. That's not your fault. I thought I was the only one, Felicia said, her voice breaking. I thought there was something wrong with me, that I'd missed obvious signs. There weren't obvious signs, Natasha said. That's what makes him good at this. He's a professional con artist. But he made a mistake with me. He went too big too long. And now we have enough evidence to stop him. After the call, Jerome looked at her with something like admiration. You're good at this. At helping people see they're not to blame. I needed to hear it too, Natasha admitted. I've been asking myself what I missed, what I should have seen. But the truth is he was careful. He planned everything. The only thing he didn't plan for was me fighting back. Thursday brought more revelations. The investigators discovered that Eric and Candace had a storage unit filled with documents. Fake IDs, blank marriage certificates, business registration templates. They'd been planning to run the same con on someone else after they were done with Natasha. They're professionals, Patricia explained. This is what they do. They find successful, kind-hearted people and they bleed them dry. You're not their first victim, but if we do this right, you'll be their last. Friday morning, exactly 1 week after Eric had smiled and destroyed Natasha's world, the criminal charges were filed. Fraud, forgery, identity theft, theft by deception. The district attorney's office issued arrest warrants for both Eric and Candace. Natasha was in Jerome's office when the call came through. They were in custody. How do you feel? Jerome asked carefully. Natasha thought about it, examining her emotions like she was looking at something through glass. She felt satisfied, yes. Vindicated. But underneath that she felt something else. Free. I feel like I can breathe again, she said. For 5 years I was living someone else's version of my life. Now I get to decide what comes next. And what does come next? Jerome asked. Natasha looked out the window at the city where she'd built her first business, where her family had made their name, where her real life had been waiting for her while she lived in Eric's fantasy. Everything, she said. Everything comes next. On Saturday morning, Natasha drove to her parents' house for the first time since everything had fallen apart. The tree-lined street looked the same as always, the large houses with their perfect lawns and expensive cars in the driveways. She'd grown up here, had learned to ride a bike on this very street, had walked to school with neighborhood kids who were now doctors and lawyers and business owners. Her mother opened the door before Natasha could knock, pulling her into a fierce hug. My baby, she whispered. My strong, brilliant baby. Natasha let herself be held, breathing in her mother's familiar perfume, feeling the tension she'd been carrying start to release. Her father appeared behind her mother, and soon Natasha was surrounded by both parents, by love and support and the safety of being someone's daughter. Come sit, her mother said, leading her to the kitchen table where family meals had been eaten for 30 years. I made your favorite. The coconut cake. Mom, it's 10 in the morning. So, my daughter needs cake, she gets cake. They sat around the table, and Natasha told them everything Jerome and the investigators had found. Her parents listened, her father's jaw clenching tighter with each revelation, her mother's eyes filling with tears. I should have seen it, her father said when she finished. I should have known something was wrong with that boy. None of us saw it, Natasha's mother said firmly. Because Eric was good at lying. That's not on us. That's on him. The business, Natasha's father said, changing the subject with the practical mindset that had made him successful in his own right. Jerome says you own it outright? Yes. It's registered to me, all the licenses are in my name, all the client contracts specify me as the service provider. Do you want to keep it? Natasha paused, considering. She'd left her consulting work when she married Eric, had believed him when he said they should focus on building his business together. But before Eric, she'd been good at what she did. Really good. I don't know, she admitted. That business is tainted now. It's built on fraud. Then build something new, her father said. Take the clients who were legitimately served, return money to the ones who were defrauded, and start fresh. You have the skills, the credentials, the experience. You don't need Eric's name or his fake business. Build your own. The idea settled in Natasha's mind like a seed finding soil. Her own business. Her own clients. Her own reputation separate from Eric's lies. I could do that, she said slowly. I could reach out to my old clients, the ones from before Eric. See if they need consulting work. You absolutely could, her mother agreed. You were brilliant at that work, Natasha. You helped so many businesses restructure and thrive. Remember the Johnson Manufacturing account? You saved that company. Natasha did remember. She'd been 26, fresh out of business school, and had been hired to help Johnson Manufacturing avoid bankruptcy. She'd spent 3 months analyzing their operations, cutting costs, restructuring their supply chain. The company had not only survived but had thrived, doubling their revenue within 2 years. I was good at that, Natasha said, the memory bringing a smile to her face. I really was. You were better than good, her father said. And you can be again. Eric didn't take your skills, your intelligence, your work ethic. Those are still yours. He just made you forget you had them. After breakfast, Natasha went up to her childhood bedroom, which her parents had kept mostly unchanged. Her trophies from debate teams still lined the shelves. Her Northwestern pennant still hung on the wall. Photos from high school and college showed a younger Natasha, confident, smiling, ambitious. She sat on the bed and pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found old client names. People she'd worked with before Eric, before she'd put her own career on hold to support his dreams. She started composing an email. Dear clients and colleagues, I hope this message finds you well. After a period of focusing on other priorities, I'm returning to consulting work and wanted to reach out to reconnect. If you or your organization is in need of business restructuring, operational efficiency analysis, or strategic planning services, I'd love to discuss how I might help. My credentials and experience remain current, and I'm accepting new clients beginning next month. She read it over, made a few changes, then sent it to 15 people. Within an hour, she had 5 responses. By the end of the day, she had 3 meeting requests and 2 immediate project offers. People remember you, Monica said when Natasha called to tell her. Your reputation is solid, Natasha. Eric couldn't destroy that no matter how much he lied. Sunday, Natasha met with Jerome to discuss the criminal case. Eric and Candace had been arraigned and released on bail, with strict conditions including no contact with Natasha and no access to any accounts or properties in her name. Eric's lawyer is already talking about a plea deal, Jerome said. He knows the evidence against them is overwhelming. What kind of deal? Natasha asked. Probably reduced charges in exchange for full restitution and cooperation. He'd still do some prison time, but maybe 2 years instead of 10. And Candace? Her lawyer is claiming she was under Eric's influence, that she was a victim too. It's garbage, but they might sell it to a jury. We're pushing for separate trials. Natasha thought about Candace, about the woman who'd sat at her dinner table, who'd smiled and made small talk while planning to destroy her life. No sympathy rose up in her heart. She knew what she was doing, Natasha said. She chose this. I agree, Jerome said. And we'll prove it. They spent the next several hours going through evidence, preparing for depositions, building the strongest possible case. By the time Natasha left Jerome's office, the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and red. She drove to the house on Maple Street, the one Eric had told her to leave. It sat empty now, all the locks changed, all of Eric's belongings packed up and placed in storage. Natasha had hired a service to remove everything that reminded her of him. The furniture they'd picked together, the art he'd chosen, even the dishes they'd eaten from. She walked through the rooms, and in the emptiness she started to see possibility. This house had never really been a home because it was built on lies. But it could be something else now. She could sell it, use the money to start fresh. Or she could stay, reclaim it, fill it with truth and light and her own choices. In the master bedroom, she found a box the service had missed. Inside were photos from their wedding day, pictures of a Natasha who didn't know she was being conned, who believed she was starting forever with someone who loved her. She looked at the photos for a long time, studying the woman in the white dress. That Natasha had been hopeful, trusting, ready to build a life. What had happened to her wasn't her fault. She'd done nothing wrong. She'd simply loved someone who didn't deserve it. I'm sorry, Natasha whispered to the woman in the photos. I'm sorry I let him take you away. But I'm bringing you back now. The strong, confident, brilliant woman you were. She's still here. She took the photos downstairs and fed them one by one into the fireplace, watching 5 years of lies burn away. Then she called a real estate agent. I want to sell this house, she said. How quickly can we make that happen? With the market the way it is? Maybe 3 weeks if we price it right. Do it, Natasha said. I want it gone. That night, back in the hotel room, Natasha opened her laptop and created a new business plan. Not Eric's business, not the one built on fraud and lies. Her business, her vision, her future. She worked until 3 in the morning, and when she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of the woman she used to be and the woman she was becoming, and they were the same person. The house sold in 2 weeks for $50,000 over asking price. Natasha used the money to lease office space downtown, a beautiful suite on the 23rd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. She hired an assistant, a young woman named Brianna who just finished her MBA and was hungry for experience. I can't believe I get to work for you, Brianna said on her first day. I read your case study on the Johnson manufacturing turnaround in school. It's brilliant. That was a long time ago, Natasha said, but she felt a warm glow of pride. Good work doesn't get old, Brianna said simply. The new business, Natasha Williams Consulting, officially launched on the 1st of March, exactly 6 weeks after Eric's revelation. Natasha sent announcements to her professional network, updated her website, and watched as her calendar filled with meetings. The response was overwhelming. Companies wanted to work with her. Her story had made the news after Eric and Candace's arrest, and while Natasha had worried people would see her as a victim, the opposite happened. Business leaders saw her as a survivor, someone who'd been knocked down and had gotten back up stronger. "You're a fighter," one CEO told her during a consultation. "That's exactly the kind of person I want helping my company navigate tough times." The first month brought in $200,000 in new contracts. The second month, $300,000. Natasha hired 2 more consultants, both experienced professionals who respected her vision and approach. But Eric wasn't done trying to control the narrative. In late March, he showed up at Natasha's office building. Security called her before he could reach the 23rd floor. "There's a man here claiming to be your husband," the guard said. "Says he needs to talk to you urgently. Should I send him up?" Natasha's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "No. He's not my husband and I have a restraining order against him. Please escort him out and call the police if he refuses to leave." "Yes, ma'am." 10 minutes later, her phone rang. "Eric, you can't hide from me forever," he said when she answered, her recording app already running. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," Natasha said. "You violated the restraining order by coming to my building. The police are on their way. I just want to explain." "Explain what?" "How you used me for 5 years. How you stole my name, my credentials, my family's trust. How you had a whole other family while pretending to be my husband." "It wasn't like that," Eric said, and she heard desperation in his voice now. "I did love you, Natasha. Parts of it were real." "None of it was real," Natasha said coldly. "You're a con artist and a fraud, and the only thing you love is money and control. Stay away from me, Eric. The next time you violate the restraining order, you'll go straight back to jail." She ended the call and stood at her office window, looking down at the street below where police cars were pulling up. She watched as officers approached a figure on the sidewalk. "Eric." He was gesturing, probably trying to explain himself, but the officers weren't interested. They put him in handcuffs and loaded him into the back of a cruiser. "Are you okay?" Brianna asked, appearing in the doorway. "I'm fine," Natasha said and meant it. "I'm actually fine." The restraining order violation added to Eric's legal problems. His lawyer called Jerome that afternoon. "My client is willing to make a deal," the lawyer said. "Full restitution, a guilty plea to fraud charges, 5 years in prison with possibility of parole after 3. "What about Candace?" Jerome asked. "Separate negotiations. But she's willing to testify that the whole thing was Eric's idea, that she was pressured into participating." "That's a lie," Natasha said when Jerome relayed the conversation. "She was in it from the beginning. The investigators found evidence." "I know," Jerome said. "But her lawyer is good. He's building a coercion defense, claiming Eric manipulated her the same way he manipulated you. Do you believe that?" "Not for a second. But a jury might. That's why we need to find more evidence linking her directly to the planning." Patricia, the investigator, came through again. She found emails between Candace and Eric from 6 years ago, before he'd ever met Natasha, discussing their strategy for the long con. The emails were detailed, cold, calculating. They'd researched Natasha's family, her business, her reputation. They'd planned every step of the seduction. "We discussed approaching you at the business conference," one email from Candace read. "She's the perfect target. Rich family, successful business, good reputation, and most importantly, she's lonely. She's been single for 2 years since her last relationship ended. She's ready for someone to sweep her in." Reading the emails made Natasha feel sick, but also validated. She hadn't been stupid or naive. She'd been targeted by professionals who'd done their research and executed their plan flawlessly. The only thing they hadn't planned for was her fighting back. The evidence was damning enough that Candace's lawyer stopped pushing the coercion defense. In May, both Eric and Candace accepted plea deals. Eric would serve 5 years in prison. Candace would serve 3. Both were ordered to pay full restitution, though they had no assets left to pay with. "That's okay," Jerome said. "The criminal convictions are what matters. The restitution will come from selling off what assets they did have, and the rest will follow them forever. They'll never be able to escape what they did." The sentencing hearing was scheduled for June 15th. Natasha spent the days leading up to it working on her business, meeting with clients, building the life she wanted. She also started therapy with a counselor who specialized in betrayal trauma. "It's normal to still have moments of doubt," Dr. Patterson told her during one session. "You trusted someone completely and that trust was violated. That changes how you see the world. I feel like I should be over it by now, Natasha admitted. Like I should just move on and forget it happened. Healing isn't linear, Dr. Patterson said. And 6 months isn't a long time when processing something this significant. Give yourself permission to feel what you feel. Natasha left the session feeling lighter, more at peace with the complicated emotions she was experiencing. Yes, she was angry. Yes, she was hurt. But she was also hopeful, excited about her future, proud of what she was building. The night before the sentencing hearing, Monica took Natasha out to dinner at their favorite restaurant. Are you ready for tomorrow? Monica asked over appetizers. I think so, Natasha said. I've written a victim impact statement. Jerome helped me with it. Are you going to read it? Every word. Good, Monica said fiercely. Eric needs to hear what he did to you. He needs to face the consequences. The next morning, Natasha dressed in a navy suit, professional and composed. She met Jerome at the courthouse, and together they walked into the courtroom where Eric and Candace sat with their lawyers, both looking diminished in their orange jumpsuits. When it was time for victim impact statements, Natasha stood and walked to the microphone. She looked directly at Eric, at the man who'd smiled when he destroyed her world. I trusted you, she said, her voice clear and strong. I loved you. I built my life around you. And you used that trust, that love, to steal from me, to defraud my family and friends, to build your life on lies. You smiled when you told me I wasn't your wife, like causing me pain was funny. Like I was nothing. Eric looked away, but Natasha continued. But you were wrong about me. I'm not nothing. I'm stronger than you ever gave me credit for. And while you're spending the next 5 years in prison, I'll be building a life you can't touch, can't steal, can't destroy. I win, Eric. In the end, I win. She sat down, and the courtroom was silent for a moment. Then the judge spoke. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jenkins, you have caused immeasurable harm through your calculated deceptions. The court hereby sentences you according to the plea agreements, with the hope that you will use your time in custody to reflect on the damage you've caused. Bailiff, please remand the defendants. It was over. Eric and Candace were led away in handcuffs, and Natasha walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine, feeling like she could breathe deeply for the first time in months. You did it, Jerome said, walking beside her. It's really over. No, Natasha said, smiling. It's not over. It's just beginning. With the criminal case resolved, Natasha turned her full attention to building her business. By July, Natasha Williams Consulting had 15 employees and was working with 12 major clients. Revenue projections for the first year were exceeding $2 million. You're going to need a bigger office, Brianna said one morning, looking at the growing team crammed into their current space. I know, Natasha said. I've been looking at properties. She'd also been working on something else, making amends to Eric's victims. Using the money from selling the properties Eric had purchased in her name, plus the assets seized from Eric and Candace, Natasha had created a restitution fund. She contacted each person and business that had been defrauded and offered to make them whole. I know I'm not legally obligated to do this, she told each client. The courts have already ordered restitution. But my name was used to commit these crimes, and I want to personally ensure you're made whole. The response was overwhelming. Some clients were so grateful they cried. Others immediately asked if they could hire her for legitimate consulting work. By August, 8 of the defrauded clients had become real clients, hiring her for projects worth over $500,000 combined. You're turning a negative into a positive, Dr. Patterson said during one of their therapy sessions. That takes real strength. Natasha had also started speaking publicly about financial fraud and business betrayal. She gave talks at business conferences, wrote articles for professional journals, and appeared on several podcasts. Her story resonated with people, particularly women in business who'd experienced similar betrayals on smaller scales. You're becoming a voice for survivors, Monica said after watching one of Natasha's conference speeches online. People need to hear that you can recover from something like this. In September, a journalist named Nicole Chambers approached Natasha about writing a long-form article for a major business magazine. I want to tell your story, Nicole said over coffee. Not just the betrayal but the recovery. How you went from victim to victor. Natasha agreed, but with conditions. I want the focus to be on the business side, on how I rebuilt. Not just on the personal drama. Absolutely, Nicole said. That's what makes your story so compelling. You didn't just survive. You thrived. The article, titled Built on Truth, How One Woman Reclaimed Her Business After Devastating Fraud, ran in November and went viral. Natasha's consulting firm received over 100 inquiries in the week following publication. She had to hire a full-time business development person just to handle the incoming requests. But success brought its own challenges. In December, one of Eric's former business associates, a man named Trevor Cole, showed up at Natasha's office claiming she owed him money. "Eric and I were partners," Trevor said, aggressive and hostile. "I invested in the business. I deserve my share." "What business?" Natasha asked calmly, though her heart was racing. "The fraudulent one that Eric ran using my name without my knowledge?" "I didn't know it was fraudulent," Trevor claimed. "I'm an innocent investor." Natasha called Jerome immediately. Within hours, they discovered that Trevor Cole had been Eric's first investor, had known about the con from the beginning, and had been promised a percentage of everything Eric stole. Trevor was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud the next day. "Vultures," Jerome said. "They're all coming out now trying to claim pieces of what they think Eric built. But Eric built nothing. You did." Christmas came and went, Natasha's first holiday season without the weight of Eric's lies. She spent it with her family, eating her mother's cooking and watching her nieces and nephews open presents. Felt good. Real. Honest. On New Year's Eve, Monica threw a party at her penthouse apartment. Natasha stood on the balcony looking out over the city lights, thinking about how much had changed in 10 months. "What are you thinking about?" Monica asked, joining her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Last New Year's Eve I thought my life was perfect," Natasha said. "I had a husband, a house, a future all planned out. None of it was real, but I thought it was perfect. And now? Now I have a business I built, employees who respect me, clients who trust me, and a family that loves me. This is real. This is better." They clinked glasses as fireworks exploded over the city, ringing in a new year full of possibility. January brought even more growth. Natasha Williams Consulting moved into a larger office space, this time a full floor in a downtown high-rise. The team had grown to 25 people, and revenue projections for year 2 were approaching $5 million. "You're building something special," one of her senior consultants, a woman named Patricia who'd left a major firm to work for Natasha, said during a team meeting. "People believe in what we're doing here." What they were doing was helping businesses recover from internal fraud, restructure after betrayal, and rebuild after their foundations had been shaken. Natasha's personal experience gave her unique insight into how devastation could become transformation. She also launched a new initiative, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping people who'd been victims of financial fraud, particularly romance scams. The organization offered legal advice, financial planning, and therapy referrals, all free of charge. "I want to help people the way people helped me," Natasha explained at the nonprofit's launch event. "I had resources, family support, a good lawyer. Not everyone has that. But everyone deserves the chance to rebuild." The nonprofit, called Phoenix Rising, was funded entirely by Natasha's consulting firm profits and by donations from grateful clients. Within 3 months, they'd helped over 50 people navigate the aftermath of financial betrayal. In March, exactly 1 year after launching her business, Natasha stood in her office and looked at the wall where she'd hung her credentials, her awards, her achievements. Everything she'd earned through her own hard work and skill. Nothing Eric had given her. Nothing built on lies. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm proud of you." Natasha stared at the message for a long moment, then blocked the number. She didn't know if it was Eric messaging from prison somehow, or someone pretending to be him. It didn't matter. His opinion of her was irrelevant. His pride or lack of it meant nothing. She deleted the message and turned back to the work that mattered. Helping a client restructure their operations, preparing for a presentation to a potential new account, planning Phoenix Rising's expansion to 3 more cities. This was her empire. Built on truth, hard work, and her own strength. And no one could ever take it away from her again. In April, 18 months after Eric's devastating revelation, Natasha received an unexpected call from Nicole Chambers, the journalist who'd written the business magazine profile. "I'm working on a follow-up piece," Nicole said. "But I've uncovered something you need to know about. Can we meet?" They met at a coffee shop near Natasha's office. Nicole spread out a stack of documents on the table. "After my article about you came out, I got contacted by several other women," Nicole explained. "Women who'd been conned by Eric and Candace. Not just the 2 your investigator found. There are at least 9 others going back 12 years. Natasha felt her stomach drop. 9 more women? 9 that we've confirmed. There might be more. Nicole pulled out photos. This is how they operated. Eric would target successful women, romance them quickly, gain access to their finances or business connections, then disappear after 6 to 12 months. He'd take what he could carry and move on. Until you. What was different about me? Natasha asked. You had the most to offer, Nicole said gently. The longest con, the biggest payoff. Your family's connections, your business reputation, your assets. They got greedy with you, stretched it out too long. That's why they got caught. Natasha looked at the photos of the other women. Different faces, different stories, but the same expression of betrayal in their eyes. I want to talk to them, she said. All of them. Over the next month, Nicole arranged meetings with 7 of the 9 women. 2 didn't want to be involved, which Natasha respected. But the 7 who agreed to talk shared their stories, and the patterns were clear. There was Samantha, a real estate developer in Chicago, who'd met Eric 7 years ago. He'd convinced her to invest in a property development scheme that turned out to be fake. She'd lost $300,000. There was Jasmine, a doctor in Atlanta, who dated Eric for 8 months and watched him drain her savings account before disappearing. She'd been too ashamed to report it. There was Tanya, a lawyer in Houston, who'd caught Eric stealing her identity to open credit cards. She'd reported him, but he'd already moved to a different state. Each story was heartbreaking. Each woman had blamed herself, had thought she was the only one, had carried the shame of being conned. We need to do something, Samantha said during a video call with all 7 women and Natasha. This can't be just about Eric and Candace going to prison. Other people need to know this happens. I agree, Natasha said. What if we went public together? All of us telling our stories? The women were hesitant at first. Going public meant exposing their vulnerabilities, their mistakes, their pain. But slowly, one by one, they agreed. If it helps even one person avoid this, Tanya said, it's worth it. Nicole wrote a comprehensive investigative piece for a major news magazine, The Long Con, How 2 Professional Fraudsters Destroyed Lives Across a Decade. The article featured all 8 women, detailed Eric and Candace's methods, and explored the psychology of romance fraud. The article went viral immediately. It was shared hundreds of thousands of times on social media, picked up by major news outlets, and sparked a national conversation about romance scams and financial fraud. Natasha appeared on several morning shows, along with some of the other women, discussing their experiences. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people came forward with their own stories of being conned, defrauded, manipulated. You're starting a movement, Dr. Patterson told Natasha during their session that week. You're giving voice to something people have been ashamed to talk about. Phoenix Rising, Natasha's nonprofit, saw an explosion of inquiries. They had to hire 10 more staff members just to handle the calls. Other organizations reached out wanting to collaborate, to share resources, to build a network of support for fraud victims. In June, Natasha was invited to testify before a congressional committee on consumer fraud and financial protection. She stood in the hearing room in Washington, D.C., and told her story to lawmakers and television cameras. Romance fraud is a billion-dollar industry, she testified. Thousands of people are victimized every year, and many never report it because they're ashamed. We need better laws, better enforcement, and better support systems for victims. We need to stop treating this as a personal failing and start treating it as the serious crime it is. The hearing led to proposed legislation strengthening fraud penalties and creating federal funding for victim support organizations. Natasha became a spokesperson for the cause, traveling to speak at conferences, meeting with lawmakers, and appearing in media interviews. But the exposure came with a cost. In July, Natasha received threatening messages from people claiming to be Eric's friends or supporters. You destroyed his life, one message read. He made a mistake and you ruined him. Block and report, Jerome advised. These people are trying to intimidate you. Don't let them. Natasha increased security at her office and home, but she refused to be silent. She continued speaking out, continued sharing her story, continued building Phoenix Rising into a national organization. In August, Candace's lawyer reached out to Jerome with an unusual request. Candace wanted to meet with Natasha. Absolutely not, was Natasha's immediate response. I told him that, Jerome said. But I wanted you to know. Candace claims she wants to apologize, to explain things from her perspective. There's nothing she can say that I need to hear, Natasha said firmly. She knew what she was doing. She chose to participate. I don't care about her perspective. I figured as much, Jerome said. I'll tell them no. But later that night, alone in her apartment, Natasha found herself wondering what Candace would have said. Was there any explanation that could make sense of what they'd done? Any reasoning that could justify 5 years of calculated deception? No. The answer was simple: no. Some things couldn't be explained away or justified. Some betrayals were exactly what they appeared to be: cold, calculated cruelty. Natasha called one of the other women from Nicole's article, Samantha, the real estate developer. "Did Candace's lawyer reach out to you?" Natasha asked. "Yes," Samantha said. "Last week. Wanting me to meet with her, to hear her side." "What did you say?" I said no. There's nothing she could tell me that would change what happened. She and Eric stole from me, lied to me, used me. Her motivations don't matter. "That's what I think too," Natasha said. "I just wanted to make sure I wasn't being unreasonable." "You're not," Samantha assured her. "You don't owe Candace anything. Not your time, not your forgiveness, nothing." In September, Eric's parole hearing was scheduled. Even though he'd only served 18 months of his 5-year sentence, his lawyer was arguing for early release based on good behavior and overcrowding in the prison system. Natasha submitted a written statement to the parole board. "Eric Thompson is a professional con artist who systematically destroyed multiple lives over more than a decade. 18 months is not enough time to pay for the damage he's caused. I strongly oppose any early release." 6 other victims submitted similar statements. The parole board denied Eric's request. He would serve his full sentence. That night, Monica called Natasha. "Did you hear about the parole decision?" "Yes," Natasha said. 5 more years. "How do you feel about it?" Natasha thought about the question. How did she feel? Satisfied? Vindicated? Relieved? "I feel nothing," she said finally. "Eric's where he belongs and I'm where I belong. His prison sentence doesn't change my life. It's just closing a door that was already closed." "That's healthy," Monica said. "It means you've really moved on." Had she moved on? Natasha wasn't sure that was the right phrase. You didn't move on from something that had shaped you this fundamentally. But you could integrate it, learn from it, use it to become stronger. She built a business that helped people recover from betrayal. She'd created a nonprofit that supported fraud victims. She'd spoken publicly, changing laws and raising awareness. She'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and transformed it into purpose. That wasn't moving on. That was moving forward. October brought cooler weather and a new project for Natasha. A major university contacted her about developing a course on business ethics and fraud prevention. They wanted her to share her story with business students, to help the next generation of professionals recognize and avoid similar situations. "I've never taught before," Natasha said to the dean during their meeting. "You teach every time you speak publicly," the dean replied. "You teach through Phoenix Rising's workshops. You're a natural educator. We'd be honored to have you." Natasha agreed to teach one seminar course in the spring semester. She spent November developing the curriculum, reaching out to other fraud experts, and preparing materials. The work felt meaningful in a way her consulting business, successful as it was, sometimes didn't. She was directly helping young people avoid the mistakes that had cost her so much. "You're building a legacy," Dr. Patterson observed during one of their sessions. "Not just a business but a real impact on how people think about trust and betrayal in professional contexts." "I never wanted this to be my legacy," Natasha admitted. "Being the woman who was conned." "That's not your legacy," Dr. Patterson said firmly. "Your legacy is being the woman who fought back, who built something meaningful from devastation, who helped countless others do the same. Eric and Candace are a footnote in your story, not the main narrative." The perspective helped. Natasha had been struggling with how much of her identity had become tied to what Eric had done to her. But Dr. Patterson was right. Her identity was what she'd built after, not what she'd lost during. In December, Phoenix Rising held its first annual fundraising gala. The event, held at a downtown hotel ballroom, raised over $300,000 for victim support services. All 8 women from Nicole's article attended, plus dozens of other fraud victims who'd found healing through the organization. "Look at what you've created," Samantha said, standing with Natasha and watching the crowd mingle. "A year and a half ago we were all isolated in our pain. Now we're a community. We're survivors," Tanya added, joining them. "And we're helping other people survive." The 3 women clinked their glasses together, and Natasha felt a profound sense of gratitude. Yes, something terrible had happened to her. But she'd found her people, her purpose, her strength. After the holidays, Natasha took some time off for the first time in almost 2 years. She flew to Colorado, rented a cabin in the mountains, and spent a week skiing, reading, and thinking about her future. What did she want? The business was successful beyond her wildest projections. Phoenix Rising was changing lives. She was financially secure, professionally respected, personally healing. But what came next? On her last night in Colorado, sitting by the fireplace with a cup of tea, Natasha made a list of goals for the coming year. Expand Phoenix Rising to 10 more cities. Teach the university course successfully. Write a book about business fraud and recovery. Date casually with no pressure for a relationship. Buy a house that's just mine, chosen by me, filled with my choices. The list felt good. Ambitious but achievable. Personal but not self-indulgent. She returned to work in January refreshed and ready. The university course began in February, and Natasha discovered she loved teaching. The students were engaged, asking thoughtful questions, sharing their own concerns about entering the business world. How do you trust people again? One student asked during a class discussion. After something like that? Carefully, Natasha answered honestly. You don't stop trusting everyone just because some people are untrustworthy. But you trust with your eyes open. You verify. You pay attention to red flags. You trust people who've earned it over time, not people who demand immediate trust. In March, a publisher reached out about the book idea. They wanted a practical guide to preventing, recognizing, and recovering from business fraud, co-written with financial and legal experts but anchored by Natasha's personal story. I'll do it, Natasha said, but only if we include stories from other victims too. This can't be just about me. The publisher agreed, and Natasha spent the next several months interviewing fraud victims, legal experts, financial planners, and therapists. The book, tentatively titled Trust After Betrayal, A Practical Guide to Business Fraud Recovery, was scheduled for publication the following year. In April, Natasha bought a house. Not the house she'd shared with Eric, which had sold long ago. A new house in a different neighborhood, a beautiful craftsman-style home with a front porch, a backyard garden, and a home office with built-in bookshelves. This is perfect, Monica said when Natasha gave her the tour. It's so you. It was her. The furniture she chose, the colors she painted, the art she hung on the walls. Every decision was hers, every choice reflected her taste, her values, her vision. She hosted a housewarming party in May, inviting her family, her employees, the women from Nicole's article, her closest friends. Her home filled with laughter and conversation, with real relationships built on honesty and mutual respect. Speech, someone called out, and suddenly everyone was looking at her expectantly. Natasha raised her glass. 2 years ago I thought I'd lost everything. I thought the foundation of my life had crumbled, and I'd have to rebuild from scratch. But I was wrong. The foundation was always there, inside me. My strength, my skills, my capacity for resilience. Eric couldn't take those things because they were never his to take. So this house, this business, this community we've built together, this is all built on that foundation. On truth, on hard work, on genuine connection. And nobody can ever take that away from us. The room erupted in applause and Natasha felt tears prick her eyes. Happy tears. Grateful tears. Tears of someone who'd been through fire and come out stronger. That night, after everyone had left and she was alone in her new house for the first time, Natasha walked through each room, touching her furniture, her books, her belongings. All chosen by her. All honestly hers. She thought about Eric briefly, wondered where he was in his prison routine, if he ever thought about the lives he'd destroyed. Then she released the thought, letting it float away like smoke. His story was over. Hers was just getting started. In June, exactly 2 years after Eric and Candace's sentencing, Natasha received notification that both were up for their first official parole review. Unlike Eric's previous early attempt, this hearing was routine, part of the standard review process. Do you want to submit another statement? Jerome asked. No, Natasha said. I said what I needed to say last time. If they get parole, they get parole. It won't change anything for me. Jerome studied her face. You really mean that, don't you? You've actually let it go. Not let it go, Natasha corrected. But I've put it in its proper place. What they did was terrible and they deserve to serve their time. But whether they serve 3 years or 5 years doesn't change my life. I've already moved forward. The parole board denied both applications anyway. Neither Eric nor Candace had shown sufficient remorse or personal growth to warrant early release. Good, Monica said when she heard the news. They should serve every single day. But Natasha felt oddly detached from the decision. The criminal justice process was doing its work and that was enough. She had other things to focus on. Like the upcoming Phoenix Rising expansion. By summer, the organization was operating in 15 cities and helping over 500 people per month. They'd also launched a hotline for people to call when they suspected they were being defrauded. "We're saving people from going through what we went through," Tanya said during a Phoenix Rising board meeting. "That's incredible." Natasha's consulting business had also evolved. In addition to the traditional restructuring work, she developed a specialty in helping companies recover from internal fraud and leadership betrayal. Her unique perspective made her invaluable to organizations dealing with similar crises. "You've created a niche that didn't exist before," one client told her. "There are plenty of consultants who can fix operational problems, but you understand the human element of betrayal. You know how to rebuild trust." In July, Natasha took a 2-week vacation to Jamaica. She'd been promising herself a real break for months, and her assistant had finally blocked out her calendar over Natasha's protests. "You need rest," Brianna had said firmly. "The business will survive without you for 2 weeks." Jamaica was beautiful. White sand beaches, turquoise water, warm sunshine. Natasha spent her days swimming, reading novels, and eating fresh seafood. She deliberately didn't check her work email, didn't take business calls, didn't think about fraud or betrayal or recovery. On her 5th day there, she met Isaiah. He was at the resort photographing the architecture for a coffee table book about Caribbean colonial buildings. They met at the beach bar, where he was setting up his camera to catch the late afternoon light on the hotel's facade. "The light here is incredible," he said, noticing her watching him work. "See how it hits the columns? That's what I'm trying to capture." Natasha looked at the building, seeing it through his eyes. The play of light and shadow, the way the sun made the white paint glow. "It's beautiful," she agreed. They talked for an hour, first about architecture and art, then about their work, their lives, their passions. Isaiah was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in her answers, not performing or calculating like Eric had been. "What brings you to Jamaica?" he asked. "I needed a break," Natasha said. "I've been working pretty intensely for the past 2 years." "What do you do?" She told him, giving the brief version. Consultant specializing in business recovery, nonprofit founder helping fraud victims. She didn't mention Eric specifically, didn't lead with her trauma. "That's amazing work," Isaiah said sincerely. "Helping people rebuild after devastation? That takes real strength." They had dinner together that night and the night after. Isaiah was thoughtful, curious, respectful of boundaries. He shared stories about his travels, his photography, his family in North Carolina. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He paid his own way and didn't assume anything. "I like you," he said on their 3rd evening together. "I'd like to stay in touch after you leave." "I'd like that too," Natasha said carefully. "But I need to be clear. I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm still figuring out my life." "That's okay," Isaiah said easily. "I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. I just think you're interesting and I'd like to get to know you better. Whatever that looks like." His honesty and respect for her boundaries made Natasha relax. When she returned home 2 weeks later, they kept in touch through texts and video calls. Easy, casual, no pressure. "He seems nice," Monica said when Natasha mentioned Isaiah. "He is nice," Natasha confirmed. "We're taking it slow." "Good. You deserve nice." In September, Isaiah mentioned he was considering relocating to Natasha's city for work. A gallery wanted to represent his photography, and there were more opportunities for architectural photography in a larger market. "I'm not moving there for you," he clarified quickly. "I'm moving for work. But it would be nice to be in the same place." "It would," Natasha agreed. He moved in October, finding an apartment downtown near his gallery. They started seeing each other more regularly. Dinners, museum visits, walks through the park. Natasha introduced him to her family at Thanksgiving, where he charmed her mother by asking detailed questions about her cooking techniques. "I like him," Natasha's father said, pulling her aside. "He seems genuine." "He is," Natasha said. "Are you happy?" her mother asked. Natasha considered the question. Was she happy? Yes, but not because of Isaiah specifically. She was happy because of the life she'd built, the work she was doing, the person she'd become. Isaiah was a nice addition to that happiness, but he wasn't the source of it. "I'm happy," she confirmed. "Really happy." At Christmas, Phoenix Rising published its 2-year impact report. They'd helped over 2,000 fraud victims, distributed more than $5 million in support services, and contributed to the passage of 3 new state laws strengthening fraud penalties. "Look at what we've built," Natasha said during the staff celebration. "None of this existed 3 years ago." We created it from nothing, from pain, from determination to help others avoid what we went through. That's incredible. The room erupted in applause, and Natasha felt profound satisfaction. This was real. This mattered. This was changing lives. On New Year's Eve, Natasha stood on Monica's balcony again, exactly where she'd been 2 years earlier. Isaiah was inside with the party guests, giving her space when she'd said she needed a moment alone. 2 years ago, she'd been 6 months out from Eric's devastating revelation. She'd been building her business, fighting for justice, learning to trust again. She'd been raw and hurt and uncertain. Now she was strong, successful, surrounded by real love and genuine relationships. She'd built a business that helped people, a nonprofit that changed lives, and a personal life that felt authentic and joyful. She thought briefly about Eric in his prison cell, about Candace in hers. Did they regret what they'd done? Did they think about the lives they'd destroyed? It didn't matter. Their regret or lack of it couldn't touch her now. She'd moved so far beyond them that they were barely visible in her rearview mirror. "You okay?" Isaiah asked, stepping onto the balcony. "I'm perfect," Natasha said, and meant it. As fireworks exploded over the city, ringing in another new year, Natasha smiled. Not Eric's satisfied smile from that terrible night 3 years ago. A real smile. A free smile. The smile of a woman who'd been tested and had emerged victorious. Spring brought the publication of Trust After Betrayal. The book launched in March, 3 years after Natasha had discovered Eric's fraud, and became an immediate bestseller. It hit the New York Times business list in its first week and stayed there for 6 months. "People need this information," Nicole Chambers said during one of the many interviews they did together. "You're giving them practical tools to protect themselves and recover if the worst happens." The book tour took Natasha to 20 cities over 3 months. She spoke at bookstores, business conferences, and universities. Everywhere she went, people came up to her with their own stories of betrayal and recovery. "You gave me permission to stop being ashamed," one woman told her after an event in Chicago. "I thought what happened to me was my fault. Your book helped me see it wasn't." Those conversations, more than the sales numbers or the bestseller status, made the work meaningful. Natasha was helping people heal, helping them see they weren't alone. By summer, Natasha Williams Consulting had grown to 50 employees across 3 offices. Revenue for year 4 was projected at $15 million. The company had become one of the most sought-after consulting firms for businesses dealing with internal fraud and leadership crises. "You've built something really special," Patricia, her senior consultant, said during a strategy meeting. "Other firms do restructuring, but we do healing. That's unique." Phoenix Rising had also expanded dramatically. The organization now operated in 30 cities, had a national hotline receiving hundreds of calls per week, and had helped over 10,000 fraud victims access legal, financial, and therapeutic support. "We need to hire a full-time executive director," Natasha told the Phoenix Rising board in June. "The organization has grown beyond what I can manage while also running the consulting firm." They hired a woman named Rachel Torres, who'd spent 15 years running nonprofit organizations and had a passion for fraud victim advocacy. Natasha stayed on as board chair and primary spokesperson, but stepped back from day-to-day operations. "This is your legacy," Rachel told her during their first meeting. "What you've built will outlive both of us." "That's incredible." In July, Natasha received a letter forwarded through her publisher's office. The return address was the prison where Eric was serving his sentence. She stared at the envelope for a long time, debating whether to open it. Finally, curiosity won. She opened the letter carefully, Jerome on the phone in case she needed legal advice. "Dear Natasha," the letter began. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to reach out anyway. I've spent the last 3 years in prison thinking about what I did to you and the other women. I've been working with a therapist here and I finally understand how much damage I caused." Natasha read 3 lines then stopped. She didn't need Eric's apology or his therapy insights. She didn't need his understanding of the damage he'd caused. She'd already processed that damage, already healed from it, already built something better. She put the letter back in the envelope, walked to her home office shredder and fed it through. The machine hummed, turning Eric's words into confetti. "That felt good," she said to Jerome on the phone. "Good," Jerome said. "You don't owe him your time or attention." "I don't owe him anything," Natasha agreed. In August, Natasha bought a vacation home in Jamaica, a small villa near where she'd met Isaiah. She furnished it simply with comfortable furniture and bright Caribbean colors. It became her retreat, the place she went when she needed to step back from the intensity of her work. Isaiah came with her sometimes, but he also respected when she needed solo time. Their relationship had deepened over the past year, but it remained light, easy, pressure-free. They enjoyed each other's company but maintained independent lives. "Are you two going to get married?" Natasha's mother asked during one family dinner. "Maybe someday," Natasha said. "Or maybe not. We're happy as we are." Her mother looked like she wanted to push, but Natasha's father put a hand on her arm. "Let them be," he said gently. "Natasha knows what she wants." He was right. Natasha did know what she wanted. A life built on her own terms, relationships that honored her boundaries, work that mattered, and freedom to define success for herself. September brought a surprise. Candace was being released on parole. She'd served 3 years of her sentence and had apparently convinced the parole board she was reformed. "How do you feel about that?" Dr. Patterson asked during their session. "Nothing," Natasha said truthfully. "Candace being in prison or out of prison doesn't affect me. She's not part of my life." "That's significant growth," Dr. Patterson observed. 3 years ago, the thought of her release would have triggered you." 3 years ago, I was still healing," Natasha said. "Now I'm healed." "Not healed," Dr. Patterson corrected gently. "Healing. It's a lifelong process." "Okay," Natasha conceded. "Healing. But in a good place. A strong place." In October, Natasha was invited to speak at a major business conference on the topic of building trust in the age of fraud. She stood on stage in front of 2,000 business leaders and shared her story. "I was conned by a professional," she told the audience. "Someone who studied me, targeted me specifically, and executed a perfect long-term fraud. For a long time I was ashamed of that. I thought it meant I was naive, stupid, gullible. But I was none of those things. I was a person who trusted someone who didn't deserve trust. And that's not my failure. It's his." The audience gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of people came up to her with their own stories, their own fears, their own questions about trust and betrayal. "You've given people language for their experiences," one attendee told her. "That's a gift." November brought Natasha's 35th birthday. Her family threw her a party at her parents' house, and Natasha looked around at the people who'd supported her through everything. Her parents, Monica, Jerome, her employees, the women from Phoenix Rising, Isaiah. "Make a wish," her mother said, bringing out a birthday cake. Natasha closed her eyes. What did she wish for? She had a successful business, meaningful work, financial security, genuine relationships, personal peace. What else could she want? She wished for continued strength to help others. She wished for Phoenix Rising to reach even more people. She wished for all the other fraud victims out there to find their way to healing. She blew out the candles and everyone cheered. In December, Eric was released from prison. He'd served his full 5-year sentence. Monica called to tell Natasha. "He's out," Monica said. "I thought you should know." "Okay," Natasha said. "Thanks for telling me." "That's it? Just okay?" "What else is there to say?" Natasha asked. "He served his time. Now he's out. His life and mine don't intersect anymore." She meant it. Eric's release didn't frighten her or anger her or affect her at all. He was a stranger who'd once caused her pain. Now he was just a stranger. On New Year's Eve, Natasha stood in her own home for once, hosting her own party. Her beautiful craftsman house was filled with people she loved and trusted. Music played, laughter echoed through the rooms, and Natasha moved through her party feeling light and free. At midnight, Isaiah kissed her as fireworks exploded outside. "Happy New Year," he said. "Happy New Year," Natasha echoed. Later, after everyone had left and she was alone in her house, Natasha walked through the rooms turning off lights. She paused in her home office, looking at the wall where she'd hung her achievements. Her degrees, her business awards, photos from Phoenix Rising events, the New York Times bestseller announcement. Everything on that wall she'd earned herself. Everything in her life she'd built on truth. She thought about the woman she'd been 4 years ago, married to a man who didn't exist, living in a house built on lies, believing she was building a future that was never real. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, more authentic. Someone who'd been tested and had emerged victorious. Someone who'd turned devastation into purpose and pain into power. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday. Eric." Natasha looked at the message for a long moment. Then she blocked the number, deleted the text, and set her phone down. She didn't need Eric's apology. She didn't need his hope for forgiveness. She didn't need anything from him at all. She walked to her bedroom, climbed into her bed in her house that was completely hers, and fell asleep smiling. She'd won. Not because Eric lost, but because she'd built something better than anything he could have given her. She'd built a real life filled with real love and real purpose and real joy. And nobody could ever take that away from her again.